Welcome to the Belfry Hockey Podcast. I'm Daryl Belfry, and this is Season 3, Episode 3. We're going to continue along working through our 4 teaching structures. This is going to be parallel structures, which is the second one. I want to go through kind of what it is, where it's kind of come from, and what my process has been to learn to use this structure in a much more effective way. And I personally don't even think I've really scratched the surface. I think there's still a lot of things that I could do to become even more effective. And I'll talk to you a little bit about the things that I'm interested in now and trying to be able to become even more effective in this structure. One of the things that's important to note is that a parallel structure is nothing revolutionary. Like, this has been done from the beginning of time. And as soon as there were practices, parallel structures were going on. We've all done them from the very beginning. A lot of drills have been done from the very start. And it's what I'm interested in, though, is when I started to look at these particular instances inside of drills that I was doing in practice, I saw a lot of development opportunity that I was missing, and that's really what I want to focus on. So, like, a one-on-one drill is really a parallel structure. The difference is how we approach it. So, when I was doing it, I would do one-on-one drills, and I would, set up the ice so that, the forward couldn't just go everywhere. I would create some boundaries so that the defenseman didn't have to defend, 85 feet of space. I would make sure that it was reasonable. So that was what I would do, is kind of constrain it through the design of the drill to set it up so that the defenseman had a fair opportunity to be able to defend this play. And then also, like, maybe have things in there that would force the forward to attack with a little more speed. One of the problems I first ran into when I was doing these things was the forward would just slow right down. And that was always something that was a pet peeve of mine. So I was looking for ways to become more effective in the way in which I was setting it up to make it a little bit more game-like or what have you. So what happens in these one-on-ones is that, for the most part, the players are working the drill. So the one-on-one is happening, and you get, like, the top forward on your team. He's going against, your 5th or 6th defenseman, and all of a sudden he's, like, attacking with speed. He's using the speed differential. All of a sudden he's, like, putting pucks through his legs or putting pucks through the legs of the defenseman. He's trying different things. He's trying, there's a creative piece. Maybe he's using, like, a spin. He's trying different things. Then his next rep, he goes against the best D. All of a sudden, that's not happening anymore. He's not putting pucks through his legs or the other defenseman's legs. He's just trying to, like, push the defenseman to the inside. He's trying to get maybe a little speed differential so he can pull it outside, protect the puck in a net drive, and get pucks to the net. Or he might drive him down, try to get him to pivot, pull up, and then get a shot. So, in other words, the forward is making adjustments based on who he's going against in the environment, and he's trying to figure out how he can win that one-on-one. And oftentimes, and this is what started to bother me over the years, was I wasn't doing enough with the D. I was just telling him, like, gap up, or, control your gap, or have a better stick, or whatever you do, don't cross your feet. But I just didn't feel like I was giving enough for the D. And so I try to, like, stack the deck in their favor. So I would do things to create better gaps for them earlier, create more of a game-like scenario that gave them a more fair opportunity. I might put back pressure so the next player who's going to be coming down the opposite way, that guy could be creating back check pressure so that it forces the forward to attack more with speed and have it a little bit more game. So I was doing all these, like, you could call them, like, drill constraints, where I would try to find more ways to set up the drill more effectively. So again, I was stuck kind of in that single structure where I was focused entirely on trying to make the drill better. It was only when I started to think more about making the player better that I started to go down this path of the parallel structure. I have two people, the defenseman and the forward. Each of them is trying to get something out of this 10 minutes I have allocated for this one-on-one. And the guy is going to go maybe 6 or 8 times. How can I maximize that 6 or 8 times, and what kinds of things can I do? So, some of it came from suggestion. I just go in the line and I tell my top D, hey, like, let's be creative against everybody. Let's try to find, let's attack with more speed, or let's use more change of speed, or let's be more deceptive in what it is that we're doing. Let's try to move the defenseman's stick, or let's try to attack through the triangle. Whatever. Just adding these like suggestions. Then I'd say to the defenseman, hey, make sure that you keep your feet. Don't get lunging. Don't try to do too much with your stick. Let's play the chest. Let's make sure you control the space. Let's get your alignment set up. Play that outside shoulder and make him have to come all the way across your body. Allow yourself to control the speed. And then let's figure out that spacing so where as he's attacking you, you're inviting him into your space, and then you can have your stick, but you still have your speed. You can pivot at the right time. Maybe I'd teach him the nope, where he uses that, like rotates around the forward shoulder. I get into all these like technical aspects. The problem was so now I'm focused on the teaching part of it, but the drill wasn't really like matching. So I was like, now these two things kind of have to work together is what I started to understand, and that's where I started to kind of really focus on parallel structure as an understanding, is because I understood now the way I set things up and the types of things that I'm teaching. If those things match more effectively, I'm going to get more out of it. So I can change the drill as it's going. Like I can add things to it, or I can stack the deck in the favor of one over the other. So I can set up the space so it's much harder for the forward, and then I can set up the space so it's much harder for the defenseman. I can do things to kind of manipulate, even without changing the drill, the context of the entire drill. I can just change little pieces of it that can set things up in a way that make it more effective for one or the other. And then I can bring that back to even. So it starts off, the forward gets an advantage, and then I let the forward kind of get a few reps in where they have that advantage. Then I set it up so that the D has an advantage. So now the D's feeling better, they got better technique, they got better details, they understand the difference between when they're at a disadvantage and when they're at an advantage. Then I put it even and force each one of them to try to find a way to control the space. That's essentially what I came up with as I was working through this process. And that's I'm talking about any type of one-on-one or two-on-two. I'm controlling the way in which I set up the game or the drill in a way that favors one over the other. Then I flip the favor, and then I make it even. So while the drill is going on inside the 10 minutes, I'm manipulating the situation. So this is where I started to evolve off of dummy defenders, because before that, I would have the dummy defender with the forward, and the dummy defender was doing generally nothing. I would let the forward do his thing, and then I'd be done. The drill would be over. But the defenseman was only the dummy defender. He never really got to have an advantage or get into a space where he could develop as well. And so then I would go dummy defender for the forward, and then we go live. But I never really created a scenario where the defenseman was also working on his details. That's where I felt like I needed to really get a lot better, and not get married to the drill structure. That, okay, this is the drill, it's designed this way, and we just do it the same way for the duration of that time, then we move on. I started to really like what I called work the drill, and in these ways, creating advantages, creating disadvantages, and then making it even. But I would tell them also, I learned how to communicate it better. So I would say, okay, to start, I want the forward to have an advantage. And this is why, because I want the forward to understand how he can manipulate the space in this way, how he can, he's got the defenseman at a disadvantage. That means the defenseman is going to have funny angles. I want the forward to read those angles and take advantage. Great. Do that for a few times. Then I stop, say, okay, wait a minute. Now I want to flip it. So now the forward, you're at a disadvantage. So you're facing the wrong way, and then now you turn and the defenseman's already right on you, or you have a space disadvantage, or I give you a funny puck, or that you have to now figure out how to handle, and then now the defenseman's already in good position, and off they go. And then now the defenseman is learning, okay, like if I have better gap, then these are the advantages that I have. I can start controlling where the forward space is. I can basically take control of the situation. So the defenseman learns. Then I say, okay, now let's play it live, even. So you have your details of where you want to go with this play. You have your details of where you want to go with this play. Okay, let's see who's going to take control of space. Boom, and now we go. And that is one way, not the only way, but that is one way to set up a parallel structure where there's an opportunity for both parties to get better. They have opportunity to work specifically on the details that surround how to become more effective at whatever it is that you're working on. And this is for drills, games, doesn't matter. So that's one aspect. And the other thing that I started to do too was, and this has started becoming a real pet peeve of mine, is I took my coaches out of the drills. I don't want any coaches inside of drills. Just like I don't like a dummy defender necessarily, at least I like, and I want to clarify, a dummy defender has its place, but only for a small part of the beginning. Then it has to evolve. What I don't like is when the dummy defender is there the whole drill. Or you have and this is the same as having a coach. So you put the coach in there. The coach understands exactly how the angle needs to be. They're manipulating this thing based on what they know about each player. And they set this whole thing up, and the coach is in the drill. And you could argue that there's some value in that. I started to take the coach out. I don't want coaches in the drills at all. I want the players in the drills. And you teach the players how to be effective in these advantages and disadvantages, and that's a more effective way of utilizing a dummy defender. So rather than have the dummy defender be like a blob and not really active and not have very good, have terrible details, essentially, you're telling your defenseman, be terrible, be slow, have bad skating, bad stick, bad gap, be bad. I don't want my defenseman to be learning to do that. I'd rather put him at a disadvantage, put him at a space disadvantage. Now he's got to figure out how to create. And what happens is when you put him at a disadvantage, now the player is learning how to manage a disadvantage and still win the rep. So yeah, you put me at a space disadvantage, you put me at, all these problems that I have to figure out. Well, I can figure my way through this. I can find the solution here. And there's a lot of value in that. And so I'd rather, even though I've put the defenseman at a disadvantage, and you're not always going to have an advantage. You're not always going to play it even. In a game, of course, there's all kinds of, the game's not fair. Oftentimes it's a turnover and now you're stuck. You're in a bad spot. Like, there's value in learning how to figure out how to get yourself in a better spot. That's part of why I took out dummy defender and took out coaches, and replace those with competitive advantage or disadvantage. I call them deficit drills. So you start in a deficit, and then you got to figure out the deficit, and the other guy's got the advantage, and then I flip it. And then we play it whatever even, or I set up deficits, but you, the player, don't know who's at a deficit or who's at an advantage until it happens. There's all kinds of manipulatives that you as a coach can do to structure the drill and the details, marry them together so that you now have a much more effective structure for the players to be able to learn from. That's what this is about. Now that's one aspect, and that is, and I used the one-on-ones as an example. You can do 2-on-2, you can do whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just opposite. You could do the forecheck versus the breakout. You can do, power play versus penalty kill. All those are all the same. Put the on the breakout versus the forecheck. You start off, you put the retrieval at an advantage. They have a space advantage. Then you put the forecheck at an advantage. They're literally breathing down the neck, and now it's a lot of problems. Then you make it a little more even, and then you make it live where we don't know. Hey, you could be at an advantage, or you could be at an advantage. We're not going to know until we get started, until we get going. I might put it in early. The forwards route could be different. We don't know. And then that creates the randomness that we're looking for to be able to make sure that we got all the right reads. But what happens is that when you over prioritize reads and you just make everything live, what happens is you miss the reps because you can't control how many reps the player is going to get. You certainly can't control how whether they're going to get good reps or not. And so now you have no reps. And then where there's no reps, there's no details. So what you find with kids, and we're starting to see it now as these players start going into the NHL and they start moving up into the pro ranks, players who spent a lot of time doing a lot of games, they tend to lack a lot of detail, like specific, good, structured detail, because they don't get the reps to work on the details. So the idea here is to create a practice structure and create a development structure over time that gives them some opportunity to have structured reps where they can really figure out what's going on, get their stick in the right spot, get their footwork settled down properly, understand what's supposed to happen, and then you gradually start to open it up where now you got to figure out, sometimes you're at a deficit and these are the responses that you have to have, and you've figured out those reads and you understand how to manage those spaces, and then sometimes you're gonna have to have the advantage, and when you have the advantage, first you got to recognize you have an advantage, and then what's your response. All that is great, but if you only do that, the player is going to lack details. And that's what we're trying to avoid. And that's why these parallel structures and manipulating them back and forth can give you a really good insight into how to create a development structure that really maximizes the acquisition of good, solid, fundamental detail, giving them great reps inside of those things, stacking the rep at deficits at different times, forcing different types of responses, creating reflection, and then ultimately opening things up where now they got to figure out what, am I at an advantage? Am I at a disadvantage? What's the situation here? And then play the game based on, and play to the response, I guess, of the conditions, and learn how to manage that. There's tons of value in that. But like I said, I think there's a way to build that, and parallel structures are a great way to do that. Talked about dummy defenders. We talked about coach pressure, which is good. So one of the other things that is really effective and that we don't always think about, that I have become much more focused on, and this is an area that I want to become even better at, is when you can set up an activity And then you have a player who's outside that activity but has to focus on their specific details. And then there's certain triggers, reads, whatever you want to call them, that activates that player in a certain way. And the player is outside of the initial opportunity and making but adjusting in accordance to what their positioning should be on the ice given that situation. So let me give you a scenario. You set up a game, it's regular 2-on-2 game, okay? And you have red versus white. Now, in the game, it's 2-on-2. I also have a red and a white defensive forwards who are on the hash marks in the interior of the defensive zone. And they're one is on each team. Now, when the 2-on-2 is going on, you have one of the guys. So let's say red has the puck. So red has the puck. The red guy who's in the slot, he is on offense in the slot, but not part of the drill. He's never getting the puck. It's a 2-on-2. He's got nothing to do with it. All he's doing is trying to move effectively into soft ice. So he's just trying to find, like, where's the seam. So the puck was behind the net. When it's behind the net, I got to be on the forehand side, or where the direction of travel is going to be. I'm going to make sure I'm on that side. I got a good stick. I got good positioning. My footwork is solid. So now if the puck comes to me, boom. I'm just working on the details of my availability as the high F3 in the offensive zone, both positionally and what my footwork and my details are. All I'm doing is working on my details, pre-touch details. I'm never going to touch the puck. It's a 2-on-2. Okay, you have that. The white, when their team has the puck, he's defensive, weak side defensive defender, forward. And all he's doing is working on his defensive habits. So when the play is low, what are my habits? Where are my feet pointing? What are my eyes doing? How do I get my head on a swivel? Where is my stick? What are the things? How do I move? When the puck goes from one side to the other, where am I moving to? I'm on the strong side on this side, but then when the play goes to the other side, I'm on the weak side. So these two things are happening at the exact same time. These two players are working independently of each other. They have nothing to do with the 2-on-2. 2-on-2 is just working independent of this. But these guys are working these details in the drill, but they have nothing to do with it. They're never going to get the puck necessarily. Now, one of the things you could do, and this is something that I've started to toy with, is you say, okay, in the event that there is a loose puck and white, who's defending, white is going to get it. So it's clear white's going to win the puck. I want that white defensive forward to read that and sprint in transition into the neutral zone and have the white guy send the puck up there. So it's long pass, long transition to try to get out in quick transition from defensive zone coverage. This weak side defensive forward, who's all he's doing is working on his details, if there's a loose puck that white can get to, he's going to read that and he's sprinting out and he's trying to get the timing, and we're trying to get that play. Could be a little board pass, could be a chip, could be a straight pass that's right on the money, and he's gone. That's the type of thing that I want to evolve better in my work inside of parallel structures, is to have some of these other things going on. Now, the 2-on-2 is going on all the time. Now, where it also gets interesting is as the 2-on-2 is going on, and again, one of the things to understand, whenever I talk about a game, there's never going to be two nets in the end. I don't do it like that. I put the net where it's supposed to be, because I am a big believer, especially with the players that I work with. I typically want the net where it's supposed to be, only one net, the goalie in there, and I want the ice geography to be what it is, because I care about seams and hash marks and the high slot and the lows. I care about those things more than I care about making sure that the other goalie is also involved. I don't care about that stuff. I care about I want the ice geography because, like I said, I want to set up things to promote more understanding and better understanding of how to work the ice geography as it relates to timing. When the kids are younger, you don't have to worry about that stuff because they're not there yet. So you can do your cross ice games and it's great. You don't have to worry about ice geography. They're not there yet. When they get older and they're more proficient, then ice geography becomes a big deal. And I personally don't do any games that have these like multiple nets and all this stuff. I just don't do it because I think that there's too much value in doing the other stuff. That's why I do it that way. So anyway, just so we're clear, so you're not like, okay, well, how does that work? We got two nets. We don't. No, you don't. There's one. That's just me personally. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Well, I am. I'm saying like there's depending on what level you're coaching. Yeah, like there's way more value at times to do it this way. And unless you're just trying to have fun, that's different. Drop the puck, 3-on-3, cross ice. Kids love that. And in the NHL, they love doing that. And sometimes you need that. It's just a break. But I'm saying when you're teaching, it's different. And if you're trying to elicit something from this game, like you're trying to teach them something, one net with ice geography is much more effective. So all of my games are structured that way because of that. Now, all that being said, that's why I'm looking for all these other ways in which I can involve other people where they're not involved necessarily in the drill. I don't want that 3-on-3 or 2-on-2 to then add more players. But I want those details, and who doesn't want better defensive details? And you have one of your coaches is focused on those two players, what their details are, and making sure that they have great details. And when they come off, they talk about their details and their timing and being in the right place and the read and all that sort of stuff. And that's another thing. Rather than have the coach in the drill, you have the coach in the line so that when the player comes back, there's a discussion of what happened and what could have happened and where the reads broke down or where the footwork or the technique wasn't as good, and the players got great reflection. So now they can go in, and when the next time they go in, they get an opportunity. They've already had good reflection, and they got an opportunity to do it differently. Those are the types of things that I start to think about as it relates to parallel structures, is trying to find these other development pieces that could go in. Now, here's another. So that's one. So one evolution is you just have the straight 2-on-2. It's a parallel structure. It starts off with the 1-on-1. You have the defense. We go through all that I just talked about with the defender having a deficit. Then he gets an advantage. Then we play a little more even. Then we, depending on how we spot the puck and where we create these advantages, and they got to read and figure all that out. Okay, then it moves to like a 2-on-2. We have all these other support ideas and puck protection ideas. You go through all that sort of stuff. And then you get to what I just spoke about, which is now you have this whole thing going on, and then you have this other element that's working independent of that that's also working on. And at some point it kind of links in, but it's more to get the details down of that position. It's a free opportunity to do it, so that we want to take advantage of that. Then the next part of that is that when the puck as the puck changes hands, so as the white team has the puck and then they lose control of the puck, and now the red team has the two guys in the middle that are working on, one guy is working on the offensive high F3 details, and the other guy is working on the defensive weak side defending details. They have to read the possession change, and they flip roles. So right away, bang, they flip roles, and now the guy that was doing the defensive stuff, he's now on the offensive side, and vice versa. So that's another. So now you're creating this like flip back and forth. That's another thing. The other thing too that I do a lot of when I set up my games is when the play changes sides, the role changes. So what would happen would be if the 2-on-2 is going on one side and red has the puck. if red has the puck and the puck goes to the other side, the guy who is the F3 on this side, he is now low. And one of the two guys, whoever is the last guy out of that corner, he's going to rotate up and he is the F3. So now I create that rotation. So now you got rotation and F3 details inside that 2-on-2. This is pretty high level. This is a very high level structure now that allows me to really dig into a lot of interesting details. Not to mention that my defensive forward also is doing the same thing. So he is on the. So I always have a weak side defender. So now as the play switches sides, the guy who is the weak side defender, he's now in the corner as part of the two, and another guy has come and become the new weak side defender. And so there's all these rotations, which I think is a really important part of any offensive zone and defensive zone rotations, and understanding your role and all that stuff. It's really important stuff, critical. So, and knowing your role change and when it changes and being able to read that. Plus, I got my footwork and all that stuff. There's a lot of details that can be really driven home with inside that structure that I had never really thought about until I started thinking about that parallel structure differently. Once I started to view it from a little different perspective, like what else can I, not what can I add, but it's like, how can I create another structure that's independent of what's going on there, that allows me a free opportunity to really focus on details that it's hard to teach those details, or like those are details that, it's harder to do those things because they don't get the reps. Because when you just do a live 3-on-3 game, the guy's high 3-on-2 and then he's out, and then the puck he goes down, and then he comes back up, he's there for a second, and then he's gone. It's hard to work on those details, and that's what I mean when it's always just live. And yes, you have certain constraints and this and that, but when it's always just live, you don't really get the reps. So this is another layer allowing you to dig into those details and get those reps that are so critically important to be able to focus on for those players. And that's something that I think is a real benefit of the parallel structure. And what I'm able to tell you here in a little more than 35 minutes is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much that you can do inside of this once you start thinking about it from that little different perspective. And all that I've spoke about so far has been the side of where it's opposite. I haven't really talked yet about running a parallel structure where we have two people on the same team that are working together and what those details are. So an example of that might be two defensemen on a retrieval. What are your details? So we have one guy going back for the puck. That's a whole certain set of details that he has to work on. Then you have the guy off the puck. Now, again, we've done this from the beginning of time. We've done all of this. Everybody has done. I mean, I used to do this one drill. I did it a million times. I'd have my 6 defensemen at the hash marks. I'd spot a puck. One defenseman goes back and gets the puck, and the other defenseman, his partner, joins him. And they would go through a retrieval support sequence. So the first one would be like a D to D behind the net. So guy gets it, other guy goes off the back post, it goes D to D, he gets it. Now, when he gets, the new guy gets it, he gets his feet above the goal line, little deception, maybe he's going to make a pass, whatever. Then he turns back. Now they do like a front post, D to D. So the first one was a back post, now they do a front post. Now he's going out the other side. They move together. They learn how to move together. The guy gets above the goal line now. He turns. The other guy turns back or does some kind of pivot. I stopped going with the turn back and started to do more like pivot so he could still face the most amount of ice. And there's a lot more skating that goes involved in that from the pivot to back and all that sort of stuff. So then, and then the next sequence would be a reverse. So now he's going like he's going to go behind the net. He's got all those details, protection, this and that. Other guys at the net, calls for the reverse. Boom. He's got a shoulder check. He jumps. He grabs the puck. And then I'd have some maybe a wheel or whatever. So they go. It's quick. They go. It's like 3 or 4 different types of plays, and we've all done this. Like this is, and that's a parallel structure. There, you have 2 players working together. Then they are trying to find the timing and the reads off of each other and get in sync, because it's better when 2 defensemen just getting on the same page and learning all of that. Awesome. And then of course you're gonna add pressure. And then because you've added pressure, now we don't know what the best play is until we see the pressure. Then it might be we need a reverse. But before, when there was no pressure, we just did it in its sequence. Now it has to be done first because the way the pressure is. Then the next one, you might not need a reverse. Or you go 3 times and you need to reverse all 3 times because of the way the pressure is. We got to read that. That's all part of figuring out. Then as you extrapolate that out into more of a game scenario where now it's like, it's a 2-on-2 retrieval, then it's a 2 versus 3 retrieval, then it's a 3 versus 3 retrieval, and then it's much more live. And then at the same time you're working on forecheck details with the forecheck guy. So rather than put the coach in there, you put a player in there. And what's he doing to start? He's dummy defender, but he's not a dummy defender. He's coming in, he's got great feet, great details, picks a good angle, has an excellent stick, does all these, focused on those details. And inside of that drill, I could have a forechecker, the one that I just described. I could have a forechecker who's only focused on stick detail and angles. Picks the right angle, also the reload, where after, let's say he goes and the guys they reverse it, so he's focused on his angle, detail. He forces the reverse. Well, now he needs to sprint to reload back through the middle of the ice. He's got to have a great stick, all that stuff. I could have that going on while I'm doing this other drill, and this guy's only focused on forecheck details. But he has nothing to do with the drill. He's not going to take the puck yet. He's only focused on forecheck details. He's part of the drill, but not really. He's not disruptive. He's just focused on. So that now, when I do want to do all this stuff, I've invested in that and used the parallel structure to invest in details that are harder to teach. Or now I got to start again. Or I've had to do a split, because I've had the D in one end, and now I got the forwards in the other end, and I'm teaching them independently, and then I bring them together. I don't have to do that. I could have half the D in one end, half the D in the other end, have the forwards there, and have the forwards running these forecheck details. And then when I want to go live, I have. So it's a way to become more efficient, but it's a way to also really teach. And now I have one coach who's focused on that player and trying to get those details down. So when we do go, he's ready to go. And it's just a way, utilizing the parallel structure in different ways. And like I said, I only got time to go through this many of them. There's hundreds of ways to set up this scenario to become more effective. I'm just trying to create we've all done the drills, so we've all either played and done the drills, or we've been coaching, or both. And now you're like, yeah, you know what, that is possible. So now it gets your mind going. So maybe now you might do things maybe slightly different. That's really what this is about. But that's the basics surrounding a parallel structure, redefining how we're going to use the dummy defenders and defenders in general, getting the coaches out of the drill because there's an opportunity now for a new opportunity now for other players to be able to work on specific details, put the coaches in the lines so that when the player comes back, there's more reflection and we're really drilling down on details. Because like I said, if we just start playing these games, you run into trouble where it's very difficult for those players, because of the number of reps that come in a game, to have elite details. So that's what we're trying to do. Build it up with the details, but have good time understanding, and then and become very efficient, so that then when you go live, the details are in the game. And that is what we're about.